Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. Okay, so this episode is a big one. So, once again, it's another lore-heavy episode, but, it's one that does kind of reveal a couple of things, establishing the history of the series. And, it's kind of a big episode. So, the episode opens up with the tourist family from the Gatorsburg episode. That one. Yeah, though that family apparently comes back in this episode, and, this time they are going to go visit the Burlington Library, which as we find out is actually an old mansion that was repurposed into a library, and of course the little girl of the family isn't particularly interested in going to see a library and points out that it'll most likely be kind of boring. But they go in, and it's very clearly this decrepit mansion in the middle of nowhere, but they decide to go in anyway. At which point they're greeted by a hooded figure, and the man the man of the family, the dad, he introduces himself by pointing out that they just let themselves in, and but it's at this point where the person that approaches them then unrobes to reveal a monster called the Fiends, and I'll openly admit that it's kind of a lame monster name, but also I should mention a really cool idea for a monster. Because as we'll see in a couple minutes, because it's at this point where after unrobing, the Fiend then proceeds to morph into a giant werewolf creature that then proceeds to chase the family out of the Burlington Library, with the little girl remarking that learning isn't actually boring after all, and that's just evil. And of course they all run out, and the dog scurries through the snow to catch up, and they eventually leave. And of course it's around this time where Mystery Incorporated were already in the area anyway. They were actually on their way to a ski trip, and they happen to be in the snowy area where the Burlington Library is actually situated. And of course everybody's excited to be going on their skiing trip, and while Scooby and Shaggy are just happy to be able to eat food. But in any case, they arrive at they're in the general area, and they note that there's a fork in the road, and one of them is a dead end. So they tell Fred. So Velma takes Fred to take the other one, but then an avalanche closes off the other route, leaving them with only the dead end. And of course Fred kind of spins out at the sudden avalanche, and he winds up messing up the mystery machine a little bit in the process, and after poking his head under the suspensions and everything, he realizes that the mystery machine is going to need some repairs so that he can, so that they're able to actually get back home, let alone to where their destination originally was. And at which point Scooby sees the Burlington Library on the hill, and with nobody really fully understanding what it is, other than that's just this ominous looking castle, they decide to go and investigate. And with Daphne pointing out that seems like a good a place as any to go and spend the night. And of course they do eventually arrive there, but they do note that it's a little bit strange. That Velma just notes that it's a little bit strange for there to be a large castle in the middle of literally nowhere, and also in the middle of a frigid region at that. So Fred goes to pull on the doorbell string, and in the process a man named, who eventually introduces himself as Dan Funk. He answers the door and is immediately a little creepy and a little bit sketchy, which of course the rest of the group quickly pick up, which of course everybody quickly picks up on. But he escorts them in and introduces them to the Burlington Library, and goes on to tell them that they appreciate having guests. And it's this way where Fred points out that they actually were wondering if they could stay the night, because obviously the mystery machine needs repairs now. And of course Dan is more than happy to let them in and let them spend the night, and also ominously stating that they can spend the rest of their days there. Which of course Shaggy and Scooby immediately pick up on and try to clue it, and the rest of the group pointing out that it feels like something is very off. But Velma really shushes them, telling them that they're their guests. But But of course, Shaggy and Scooby don't buy it for a second, pointing out that they're most likely going to be dinner instead. And it's at this point where they actually are taken through the house, and it's at this point, and Dan actually introduces them tells them that they actually already have a couple of people staring there already. And a scary older woman that they remark is that the remark has a little bit of a temper to her. And also a man from an undisclosed country who speaks an undisclosed language called Don Fong, and he is the chef that works in the Burlington Library alongside Dan. And Don is interesting because Dan notes that Don is notably a little bit grumpy and is somewhat a little bit hostile to other people, but and of course as you might expect, Don has a habit of throwing chickens at people. Like you'll be in the middle of preparing food, and then he'll just and it'll almost always involve a chicken. But he'll throw pieces of chicken at people, and we do find out eventually why he does this. But he does throw chicken at people, and because nobody can really understand what he's saying, it sounds like he's unintelligibly grumbling and yelling obscenities at them. So. For those reasons, Dan tells them to avoid Don Fong if they can help it, and at which point he decides to actually put some wood on the fire to help Don out, and does tell them that they're going to continue to look into things, and then proceeds to give them a tour of the library and tell them all about the history of it, about how he introduces them to Oswald P. Burlington, who founded the Burlington Library, and he's no longer around. In fact, he died. He was alive during the 1880s. We're well after the 18. It's implied to be this story is implied to be set in the 80s and 90s, so it's at least 100 years. So it's been at least 100 years prior to the series, but. He founded the Burlington Library. He used to live there. He used to live there with his family, and it's revealed that he actually built railroads. He actually was one of the people who helped create the giant railroad network that now covers the United States, or at least in this story. In reality, there was never really an Oswald P. Burlington, but in the story of Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, he absolutely exists, and he was absolutely someone who helps with that, and helped to connect the United States together with trains, which is cool, and that's kind of an interesting thing. But and of course, what we find out is that when he died, he requested that his Burlington Manor be turned into the Burlington Library. And with Dan going on to explain how the Burlington Library was requested to never close for any particular reason, and currently they have a relationship with the Darrow University, where should it be forced to close for any reason, it would all be moved to all of the research materials and everything else would in fact be moved to the to Darrow University's archives, and at which point Dan continues to go on his tour and continues to give them all information, and what we find out is that in addition to opening his own library, Oz Burlington was peculiarly enough interested in groups of 4 people and a mascot, which is interesting, and I'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, he then proceeds to take them through the halls, and sure enough, he has large framed pictures of several different groups of people, all of which have one thing in common: they're all groups of 4, and they all have an animal mascot of some kind. There's one of a bunch of friars and a donkey. There's another where they all dress up as Zorro, and they have a pet of their own. There's a couple of those, but there's a couple of those in there. But but then he actually gets to the crown jewel of the museum, which is actually a giant statue of Oswald Burlington's pet monkey, Mr. Peaches, which and Mr. Peaches is a large orangutan, and what we find out is that they were apparently inseparable. They went literally everywhere and did literally everything together. In fact, and and in fact, he points out that it was most likely because they just grew together and went on a whole bunch of adventures. But he also points out that that now that they finished the tour, that they're more than welcome to spend the night, and he's going to go and he puts some more wood on the fire before leaving to go investigate and go and get them set up their room so that they can all spend the night. And of course, everybody is just really happy to be able to do that. But of course, the second the group quickly splits up, and the second the group splits up, Shaggy and Scooby immediately head to the kitchen for food. They point out that seems like as good a place as any, even though Don Fong is in there and he's a little bit irritable. But they do point out that maybe they should look for some food to eat, and eventually note that Don Fong is currently throwing a pizza over his head, and concludes that that's most likely as good a place as any to start. So they go over to Don and asks him if they can have some when he's finished with it, and at which point Don Fong inexplicably turns into a large lizard man and proceeds to not only completely trash the kitchen but chase them out of it. And they start screaming and running for the hills. At which point they run into the rest of the gang, quite literally. And of course Velma points out that they came because they heard screaming and wonders what's going on. So they immediately bring the rest of the group into the kitchen where they do try to explain what's going on. But then it's discovered that not only is the kitchen completely fine and not trashed at all, but that Don Fong is actually nowhere to be found. And sure enough, to try and figure out what exactly is going on, not only do Shaggy and Scooby try in vain to actually explain to the rest of the group what exactly it is they saw, but Dan Flunk actually comes down and reveals that Don has been asleep the whole time and couldn't have been in the kitchen at the time that Shaggy and Scooby saw him. So they note that something is so Scooby and Shaggy insist that they weren't hallucinating anything, with Scooby adding that they would never lie about food. But of course, Fred ultimately just chalks it up to the fact that their nerves are all a little bit shot because they've been derailed from their station, and obviously they can't go anywhere because it's snowing, and they're also the mystery machine is stuck. So they need to. So he points out that the best thing to do would most likely to be for everybody to just settle in for the night, and they'll worry about it later. And of course, Daphne points out that she'd be more than happy to settle in, pointing out that she was actually thinking about taking a shower before going to bed. While Velma points out that asks if they're crazy and who could actually sleep in a building full of books, and of course everybody immediately raises their hand, implying that Velma is just different. But and of course Velma just gets annoyed with all of them and leaves because nobody wants to come with her to read books. So she goes off to the Burlington library, into the main library of the Burlington mansion, to just read. She just spends the entire evening reading, and of course with that, Daphne then leaves as well to go and shower. It's at this point where Fred tells Scooby that he actually needs his help because the two of them because he actually wants to check if the fuel line has any breaks in it, and Scooby is actually the best choice for that because because being a Great Dane, his nose would actually be far better at actually detecting where gas leaks are than a human would. So Fred and Scooby go outside to go and fix the mystery machine. And of course, what we find out is that as Velma is actually settling into read some books, she hears a voice coming from deeper in the library, and wonders exactly who else it is that's here. And she does remember that there was somebody else that was here, but then she goes to get a closer look, and discovers that it's actually Dean Fank from Darrow University, and who is currently pointing out that who's currently making a phone call to other people at the university, pointing out that she is actually trying to get that according to herself, she is actually looking into Darrow University, and that the second it's under her control, the better. And of course then proceeds to walk off after hanging up, which of course Velma notes is suspicious and notes that this is most likely the cranky old lady that Dan was talking about. But In any case, Daphne is actually currently in the process of showering, and as she goes to go and shower, she actually puts some more wood on the fire to help warm up. And there's just a furnace in the middle of her in the middle of the bathroom. But she puts it in, and then comes out with wraps a towel around herself, and she comes out, and then she hears a notable noise, which causes her to panic, to become a little bit confused. But she then goes to go and look in the mirror and clean it off from all the steam, and quickly discovers a massive gorgon is trying to chase her down and attack her. And she quickly wraps a rope around herself and immediately runs into the hallway where the gorgon then proceeds to just completely destroy the hallway and tries to corner her and attack her, and almost grabs her with its tail at one point. But she manages to free herself and eventually runs into one of the bedrooms where she barricades herself in with the wardrobe. Where at which point just revealed that Fred was in there, or sort of. I'll get to that in a minute, But Fred greets her and asks her what exactly is going on, and she immediately responds that she saw a huge, horrible monster thing that just decided to chase her through the hallway. And then she settles up to Fred, who comforts her, and Daphne then proceeds to reconcile with Fred, pointing out that she's missed him and that she's sorry to have ever let him go. But of course, Fred points out that it's okay now, and that he's always going to be there to look after her. But except what we find out is that it's not actually Fred. And again, I said I would get back to that, but as it turns out, Fred is currently still fixing the mystery machine with Scooby, so there's nothing. So yeah, there's obviously something strange going on there. And of course, it then goes back to cuts back to the bedroom to reveal that actually it's Shaggy that Daphne is with. And of course, for the first and literally only time in the entire franchise, the two of them, both Shaggy and Daphne, share a kiss, which of course is just weird on a number of levels. But yeah, of course, it's just interesting, and it's clear that something is going on there, where obviously they both think that Shaggy is currently Fred. There's clearly something weird, but in any case, Fred and Fred and Scooby then proceed to go up to the bedrooms and are looking around, and of course Scooby is trying to find Shaggy because he's currently trying to make sure that he's okay, because obviously they know that something is going. He saw that hallucination earlier and knows that Shaggy is probably in danger as well. So they're trying to make sure that they can find Shaggy and make sure he's safe. But and they do eventually arrive at Shaggy's bedroom, but quickly discover that the bedroom is locked, because obviously Daphne pushed a thing in front of it. But and of course, Fred has no idea what exactly is going on, where Shaggy is, but knows that it's probably fine and that he's probably already turned in for the night, and tells Scooby that's probably okay. So they leave to go continue to look to go and continue working on the mystery machine, while Scooby points out that he's going to just continue looking for Shaggy. And of course, the two of them do continue to work, and eventually Fred does indeed turn in after realizing that he can't really do much more with the snow blocking him, because he's fixed everything he can, but the mystery machine still can't leave because it's snowing. So he eventually turns in for bed. Well, of course, Scooby continues to look for Shaggy throughout the house, and meanwhile, Velma eventually falls asleep in the library, and eventually realizes that wakes up because she's cold. So she grabs some more wood to actually put on the fire, and then she hears a strange noise coming from the library, and when she looks out, she actually discovers that the statue of Mr. Peaches is completely missing. Which of course causes her to panic a little bit, and of course she also makes some. Okay, so I haven't really commented on this previously, but this incarnation of Velma is implied to be Jewish, because not only does she listen to traditional Jewish music, but she when she's being chased by the Mr. Peaches statue, she's actually proclaiming Oi. She's actually proclaiming Oi, which is traditionally spoken by Jewish people. And of course she's running away from the monster, trying to get away from Mr. Peaches. But But then, of course, out of nowhere, as Mr. Peaches has cornered her in the library, she suddenly out of nowhere, Oswald P. Burlington and all of his friends show up on a massive train. At which point, Mr. Peaches says his catchphrase and then proceeds to get onto the train and leave. And Oz waves to Velma as he goes by, with Velma flashing him a smile, and then Oswald just disappears from the main lobby of the library, which causes Velma to panic, and then she immediately goes running. Because obviously she just saw the ghost of a dead person. Obviously she's a little bit razzled, but meanwhile, Scooby has successfully found Shaggy, or at least he thinks he does. He hears Shaggy calling to him, and eventually finds Shaggy in the bathroom. But then Shaggy gets closer to him, and then Scooby sees in the reflection that it's actually the Fiend, and then the Fiend proceeds to turn into its werewolf form and chase Scooby. At which he runs into Fred and Velma who are looking into things, and of course Velma is currently freaking out as well, and tries to explain to the group what exactly it is she saw, but Scooby then proceeds to point out what he saw as well, and Fred has no idea what's going on, so he decides that they need to actually go and check on Daphne. So he runs into Daphne's bedroom and then discovers Daphne and Shaggy cuddling, and he and Scooby cannot handle it, and they notably freeze up, and they have no idea, and of course it's just treated as this horrible thing. But eventually Shaggy and Daphne eventually realize what's going on after seeing Fred, and eventually realize what exactly happened, and snap out of it, and then also proceed to try and tell Scooby and Fred that nothing happened. And even except for a kiss, which Shaggy doesn't really help the situation by just remarking that it was probably the best kiss he's ever had, which of course is just wrong on so many levels, but it's just weird. Alright, it's just a weird thing, because obviously it's treated as a weird thing as well. Obviously Shaggy is being a little bit too creepy about it. But in any case, Daphne wonders if their brains are always going to be stuck like that, but which Velma points out, asks if they would even notice, rather sarcastically. But when of course both Shaggy and Daphne shoot death glares at her, she decides to actually fix it the old-fashioned way and just tells the two of them that they're dreaming. And now in a plausible state of denial, they then proceed to ask the gang what exactly is going on. And of course, this is this point where Velma tries to bring up the fact that obviously something strange is going on, and wonders if any of the gang have any sort of clues regarding what's going on. So at which point they start relaying all of their stories about what exactly happened and when they were attacked, and eventually they figure out that they were all burning wood at the time, that they all put wood on the fire at the time that they were attacked by their hallucinations. And of course, this causes Velma to realize that there may be something more to that wood, and that it may not actually be ordinary wood. So they go down into the main library to go and investigate, and sure enough, as Velma suspected, it's actually a type of wood called terror wood. And the way she explains it is that it's actually a very powerful hallucinogen. As we find out, when burned, it causes people to hallucinate and have massive just nightmare and waking nightmares. And she explains how Native American shamans used to use it, because it would drive off any potential invaders of their territory. But she also proceeds to explain how it could potentially bring about any of anybody's worst nightmare and make them fantasize about anything. And Shaggy adds that maybe it would make somebody think that they were kissing Daphne by accident, which he then winds up covering it up, because obviously Fred doesn't know exactly what he's talking about, and obviously Fred's in a state of denial and could freeze up again. So Shaggy decides to drop it and move on. At which point Velma points out that maybe there's more to the library than meets the eye as well, and points out that there's also obviously something strange as well. So they go to investigate Burlington, which is something that she's actually been looking into, and what she found out is that Burlington also had a mystery team. What we find out is that he and his four companions, as well as Mr. Peaches, he and his companions and Mr. Peaches would just go on mysteries, following the railroads wherever the mysteries took them. So yeah, for that reason, it's revealed that he has a mystery solving team, and then that also seems to clarify why he was looking into the into the fact that all four different members and an animal mascot. It's implied that all of the people he was looking into were also mystery teams, and it's implied that that was the mystery he was trying to solve. Why are there so many mystery teams centered on Crystal Cove? And of course everybody starts to ponder through this, but then Scooby hears someone skulking around and tries to point out that tries to point out who he thinks he heard, but well, we quickly find out, and this is a joke that is played up for laughs, but essentially all three of the main suspects that we have so far have similar sounding names. You have Dan Flunk, Dean Fank, and Don Funk, who all sound similar, and obviously Scooby gets the names confused in his head, and of course Fred points out that Scooby is well forgiven for the fact that he's getting them all confused, because obviously not only do the names sound similar, but that their suspect could be any one of them, but knows just the thing they need to do to actually draw out whoever it is that they're actually that's actually attacking them. And of course, the way they decide to draw out the Fiend was by playing up the fact that they never want to leave the Burlington Library ever. And essentially what they do is they just go around announcing around the house as they're going through that the Burlington Library is such a perfect place to live, that's they're holding them away from home, and that they're going to move in indefinitely. And this causes all three of our main suspects to poke their heads out at various points and overhear what's going on. And eventually the Fiend does eventually surface and goes to trying to attack them. But of course he then winds up inadvertently setting off a trap because as it turns out, the main source of his terror wood is in fact a teepee in the middle of the Burlington Library. That is the source of his terror wood. And in the process he winds up pulling a stick away from it, which sets off a Rube Goldberg machine that causes the teepee itself to become the trap and trap him inside. And Fred comments about the fact that that one of the lines was a little bit slow, but he does point out that the trap got the job done anyway. At which point they unmask it to reveal that the Fiend is actually Dan Flunk. And when they ask him why, pointing out that he seems like he loves working at the Burlington Library and that he wouldn't want it to close down ever. He then points out that it's exactly because the library never closed that he wants to leave. And then proceeds to explain how he has essentially just lived in the Burlington Library his entire life, and that his family has worked for the Burlington family for generations. He has been born and raised in the castle, and presumably all of his parents, his grandparents, and whoever else before him, they all were born and raised in the castle as well. So he spent a lifetime in this castle. But the problem being is that A, it's cold as hell literally all the time, and B, it never closes, so he can never leave to go someplace warm because he never gets a vacation. So for those reasons, Dan was trying to close down the library. He wanted to finally get out of the library and get someplace warm, so that he could essentially just to get somewhere warm, because he didn't want to be in the library anymore. And explains how he actually found out about the terror wood by accident. He wound up burning it, wound up suffering a waking nightmare, and eventually realized he can use that to create his fiend, and use that to scare away anybody who actually got close to the library and get them all out. And it's not anything shady. He's not really doing anything illegal, but he is going against the last wishes of his master before he died. So yeah, but Oz Burlington did not want the library to shut down. So, and Dan is directly violating his last will and testament. So for those reasons, I think that's why he's arrested. He is arrested at the end of the episode. The cops eventually come by once the snow stops, and he is arrested, but it's not outright stated as to why. He didn't technically do anything illegal, unless violating a last will and testament is illegal. I have no idea, but in any case, Dan is just very, very happy about the fact that he gets to leave the library at long last, because it means he gets to go someplace warm, and then starts cackling as he's put inside the police squad car and driven off. And of course, what we find out, eventually Dean Frank and Don Fong come out, and Dean Frank reveals that actually she does know the very specific undocumented language that Don Fong speaks, and and it proceeds to reveal that actually all of the times he throws chicken at the gang was in an effort to try and warn them that something was afoot. So. Yeah, and she goes on to explain how it's actually a thing from his culture, which again is completely unspecified, but also points out that the two of them have actually become lovers, which of course is a little bit weird and also kind of funny, but of course at this point where they then proceed to ask what exactly is going to happen to the Burlington Library, at which point the dean merely remarks that she's not going to do anything. She's literally going to just preserve it the way it is. It's just going to now be an extension of She explains how she's not going to be doing anything with it. It's just going to now be an extension of Darrow University. It's going to be a remote site that is now part of Darrow University. And she remarks that she's going to do that specifically to preserve it. So that it never actually winds up getting, closed or anything else that anybody could potentially throw at it. She's trying to prevent that. But in case she points out that obviously she's very points out that it's actually a very good point that she just wants to preserve it and keep it safe. And honestly, that's just an admirable goal. Preservation of important historical locations and artifacts, that's very important. It is a historical site. It makes sense. But in case as they're talking, a book suddenly flies out the window, which of course Velma notes is odd because obviously there shouldn't be anybody else in the library because there's literally only 3 people that were living there, and one of them just got arrested. The other 2 just came outside. And upon look and then they ask the dean if she recognizes the book, and she remarks that it's actually made by a famous alchemist who Velma actually recognizes the name of, and it is eventually revealed that the person who wrote the book is actually also the person who created the planispheric disc, and that the book they found is essentially a user's guide for how to use it. Which, of course, is interesting. And of course, there had to have been instructions for how to use the planispheric disc somewhere. Obviously, the entire idea is that's supposed to go together and do something. But obviously, nobody knows how to use the planispheric disc in the present day now. So they would need that information to pop up somewhere. And as it turns out, the guy who made the planispheric disc also wrote a book on how to use it, which of course is just interesting and fun. But in case it then cuts to Velma's house, where it's revealed that Cassidy Williams has actually broken in and is currently looting through the chest of Darrow University stuff, and is putting up pictures of the Darrow family on Velma's cork board, and then proceeds to reveal that the benevolent lodge that the Darrow family was actually also called the Benevolent Lodge of Mystery, and he's yet another mystery solving team, and then remarks to herself that now all Velma has to do is figure out why this has happened so many times before, and then the episode ends. So yeah, this episode is a big one because it reveals that the first incarnation of Mystery Incorporated is by no means the first incarnation of a mystery solving team in Crystal Cove. The episode outright states that there were in fact many mystery solving teams before the current incarnation of Mystery Incorporated and their predecessors. And in this episode just implies that there have been a lot of mystery-solving teams throughout the years, and honestly, that's a little bit interesting. But also, it seems to imply that there's something a little bit deeper going on there. Point with Cassidy remarking that obviously there have been a lot of mystery-solving teams, but the why is the real mystery behind it. Why is it constantly 4 people and an animal? Why do they constantly get together and assemble like that? And frankly, that's kind of interesting. That kind of imply that first and foremost they found a planispheric disc. Well, user got instruction manual, which is kind of funny. But in fact, I'm also curious who actually threw that out the window. It might be Cassidy since she's sneaking around, but she's currently in the middle of I don't know, she's currently in Velma's house, so who knows what's going on. There's definitely something strange going on with the Bruiser Guide or something else. But I don't know. I just find it interesting that there's a lot of mysteries, and also I find it funny that the fiends didn't really have a good reason. Dan Flunk just wanted to get out of the Burlington Library because he was cold and he didn't like being there. So yeah, but in any case, I did like this episode. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well to help fund future projects like this. Be sure to check out my Discord. The link is down in the description as well. If you want us to discuss things with me, by all means. Be sure to go and check out also my, go and check out my, my Twitter as well. I post updates over there. And also, finally, go check out the videos linked in the end screen as well. The top video is the most recent one. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is the video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So if you want to try something new, or see more of what you like, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!